Hey guys, Johnny Andrews here from Johnny's Creations. I'm back in the workshop with another project. We have an air-powered bottle rocket made using a pop bottle, some styrofoam meat trays, copper pipe, some PVC pipe, an old rubber drain plug, an old valve stem, block of wood, some other odds and ends. To power this bottle rocket, we'll be using a standard bicycle pump. If you want to know how to make one of these bottle rockets, stick around and I'll show you how. Hey guys, let's start by making the rocket. To make the rocket, you're going to have to grab a pop bottle. This pop bottle is 700 milliliters, but you can use whatever size you have laying around. You're going to need a styrofoam meat tray, a rubber drain plug, an old valve stem from a tire tube, and a chunk of 3/4 inch PVC pipe. It'll be cut into smaller sections later. To make this rocket work, we have to make a pressure plug to put in the end of the bottle to allow us to pressurize the rocket. To do that, we're going to take our rubber stopper. It doesn't have to be a rubber stopper. Essentially what we need is just a chunk of rubber about 1/4 inch thick, cut into a circle that'll seal the end of the bottle. So to do this, grab yourself a razor blade. Be very careful not to cut yourself. You can cut the end off this stopper. Give yourself a flat spot, chunk of rubber. Grab yourself a block of wood. Now this part's optional. You don't have to do this. I like to use a 1-inch hole saw bit. It allows me to cut a perfect circle out of the rubber, which fits perfectly in the end of the pop bottle. Another option is you can put your bottle on, trace around it, and you can just cut the circle out with a razor blade, being very careful of course, and you can sand the edges down to make the piece smooth later. So we have our rubber stopper on the block of wood. Grab yourself a drill with the hole saw. This is just so you don't drill through your workbench. Try and get it as close to center as possible, and drill the center of the rocket. Simple as that. Take the end off your hole saw and pop out your rubber plug. So there you have your little blank, and it already has a hole dead center. This is simply going to slip over top of the valve stem, and we'll seal it up with some sealant after. So I have the valve stem inserted into the rubber blank, and we have to add some sealant around here just to kind of hold everything together. So for the sealant, I'm going to use hot glue. You can use silicone if you want, but the hot glue dries a little quicker, or cools I should say. So you want to go all the way around and keep it spinning. That'll just stop the hot glue from dripping. Try and keep it as neat and tidy as possible. So once you got your sealant applied, take a piece of cardboard and just carefully run it around as it cools, just to make sure it stays nice and smooth. You want to keep a little bit of a taper on this so it fits into the bottle easier. As you can see, I cut the circle on the valve stem just a little bit smaller than the actual rubber plug. Just to make the plug a little stronger, you can also run a little bit of hot glue around the top as well. That'll just hold things together a little better. Now we got to make the fins for the back of the rocket. I've already cut one out, and made it to fit the side of that rocket. We're going to need a total of 3 of these fins. So to make the fins, lay your first piece out and just simply trace around to make more. You might need multiple fins as they do get damaged on flights occasionally, so keep a template handy and you can cut as many as you need. Okay, got my 3 fins cut out. They're simply going to be held on with hot glue. So we're going to bead a hot glue down the foam, place it onto the bottle, make sure it's straight, and repeat for the other 2. Once your glue has cooled on the fins and the stopper, you have to test fit to see how well this fits. It should be fairly snug to fit in the back. The tighter you get it, the better the seal, which will allow us to build up more pressure in the rocket. So the rubber stopper itself isn't actually part of the rocket. It's more part of the launch pad, which I'll show you a little further on in the video. But as you can see, that's a pretty good snug fit, and I like how things are turning out. Grab yourself a piece of 3/4 inch PVC pipe. The reason I went with 3/4 is because the launching rod on the launch pad for the rocket is using a piece of 1/2 inch copper, and as you can see, it fits over fairly snug. You want a little bit of play just to allow it to slide easy on the pipe. So you're going to grab your hacksaw, cut a couple of 1/2 inch rings. So there's your 2 plastic rings. I've already sanded off all the edges to get them reasonably smooth. So you're going to take your 2 rings, you're going to mount one as close to the bottom as you can get, and one to the top. And we'll mount those using hot glue. Go generous with the glue. You want to make sure you're between your 2 fins. Try and get it nice and straight. Get your second one. You can clean up all those glue strings after. We're going to make sure he stays straight. Put another one up top. So you could fly this rocket as it is now, or you could dress it up a little bit to make it look a little bit more like a rocket. What I ended up doing was cutting the top off of another pop bottle, which has a nice snug fit. I don't even think you'd have to glue it. And if that doesn't look good enough, I grabbed a plastic Easter egg shell. Gives it a little bit more of a streamlined rocket look. You can use whatever you want, get creative, but this is what I had laying around, so I used it. To make the launch pad, we're going to use a 10 inch by 10 inch by 1.5 inch thick block of wood. We're going to use a copper pipe, 1/2 inch, roughly 2 feet long, anywhere from 2 to 3 feet. So we're going to mark the center point of our 10 by 10 block. That's your easiest way to get your center. You're going to drill a hole in the center of that block that we can insert the copper pipe. If you find the copper pipe is a little too loose in the hole, all you have to do Grab a little bit of hot glue, go right around the edge. Take your copper pipe, put it in the hole, clear all the way at the bottom. Careful running your finger over the hot glue. You don't want to burn yourself. Make sure all the glue is cleaned off the back. Of course, I'm not going to leave the bare wood. You got to paint it up, clean things up a little bit. Looks a little better than just a bare piece of wood too. So whatever color your paint you got laying around, just paint it up. There, that looks a lot better. Now we'll set that aside to dry. Okay, so we'll go through a few steps before we actually launch the rocket. First off, I'll start with a warning. It's best to have parents around if you're going to experiment with rockets. They do have some risks, can cause some injury if they're not handled properly, so it's best to have an adult around. So there's two ways you could launch this rocket. There's the dry method. It's simply just compressed air. That'll give you very fast but short flights. Or there's the wet method. The wet method is where you will fill the bottle about a third full with water, and what that does is it allows the air to escape slower, but also using the water will push out more thrust. I'm not going to get too scientific, but you will get longer, higher flights if you use the wet method. So let's set this thing up for a launch. I have a little bit of water. I'll hold this in a way so you can see how full I make it. Try not to spill too much. So you can see it's about 1/3 full to the top of the rocket, which will be the bottom when we flip it. Once you get your water in the rocket, you want to take your rubber stopper. You're going to force that in to the end of the bottle. Once it's fully seated, you'll make sure that it's in there good and tight. You don't want to push it too far in because you'll lose your stopper inside of the bottle. But I'll zoom in close here. You can see how the stopper is fully seated into the bottle. At that point, you can flick it over here. No leaks. You'll then take your air compressor or your air pump, put it onto the valve stem, and then you'll lock it in place. Will be a little bit of water, and then you'll simply prime it. That should get the pressure started, stop the water from flowing. And then you can take your launch pad, put your rocket onto the launch, and at that point, you're ready for launch. The last piece of safety advice I can give you for this rocket when launching: do not stand above the rocket once it's pressurized, because this comes off with a lot of force, and if your head is anywhere above that launch pad, it's really going to hurt if that hits you. Could cause injury, so the further away from that rocket when you're launching, the better. So, there's a medium-sized hose on here. The longer the hose you can get, the safer this rocket will be. But as you'll see in the video, when I launch, I'm going to try and stay as far back as possible so I don't get hit in the face or anywhere else with the rocket. kind of worked.
Yeah.
Too many trees in the way.
Yeah.
Last little piece of advice I could give you. Look for a big open grassy field, because pavement does not mix with plastic, and tree branches, they like to rip the fins off your rocket. So yeah, big open space, grassy field, that's your best bet for launching these rockets, and you should get dozens of flight without having to make repairs. So please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, share this video with your friends, and I'll do my best to keep this content coming. Have a great day, everybody.